The Lord be with you.
And with your spirit.
A reading from the Holy Gospel according to John.
Glory to you, Lord.
Jesus said to his disciples, "Whoever loves me will keep my word, and my Father will love him. And we will come to him and make our dwelling with him. Whoever does not love me does not keep my words. Yet the word you hear is not mine, but that of the Father who sent me. I have told you this while I am with you. The Advocate, the Holy Spirit, whom the Father will send in my name, will teach you everything and remind you of all that I told you. Peace I leave with you, my peace I give to you. Not as the world gives, do I give it to you. Do not let your hearts be troubled or afraid. You heard me tell you, I am going away and I will come back to you. If you loved me, you would rejoice that I am going to the Father, for the Father is greater than I. And now I have told you this before it happens, so that when it happens, you may believe." The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
The other day I was at Roach Brothers and a man came up to me and said, "Now your homily on Sunday, is it going to be like a Monsignor Hoylang or a Father Wyndham Lang?" I'll let you decide. If you've ever watched a TV show, oftentimes at the end of an episode, there is a preview or a teaser for next week's episode. It tries to hook you in. It gives you a glimpse of what is to come. It gets you thinking. It might be This Is Us or Law and Order, some of my favorites. Maybe that's where we get binge watching from on Netflix, because we're so intrigued by what is to come. Well, in today's gospel, we have a preview of the episodes to come from Jesus' farewell address. At the Last Supper, Jesus is preparing his disciples that he will leave them. First in his passion, death, and resurrection, but later in his ascension, which we will celebrate this week. And he is also foreshadowing to the coming of the Holy Spirit on Pentecost, which concludes our Easter season just in 2 weeks. It's the Spirit who will bring us love, will bring us peace. The Spirit who will teach them everything. Although Jesus tells his disciples that he must go away, they and we rest in the warm embrace of the Advocate, our Spirit and guide. In a sense, Jesus' disciples were in a crisis. They were nervous. But the Lord also knew at that Last Supper that his church would be facing crises in every generation to come. Challenges, persecutions, and scandals. And so he left us 3 gifts that we hear about in the gospel today, and the promise that the Spirit will never leave the church. So I think today is a day to reflect on the gifts that Jesus has left us: love, peace, and the Holy Spirit. First, love. God is the origin of love, and we must not forget that. Inside of the deepest parts of our hearts is a mark left by the one who created us, God himself. There, we were touched deeply by the one who first loved us and taught us how to love, the one who suffered and died for us, the source of where we shed our tears. Our capacity to love comes from God himself. Love involves the things that we do to God and to others. It's not just a feeling. And so our hearts desire his love. And the way that we keep his love is by following Christ and keeping his commandments. Second, peace. My peace I give you, Jesus says. The peace that Jesus speaks of is different than any other peace that we can find in this world. The peace that he is referring to is that God is always with us. We can find peace in the fact that we are never alone and that God is always with us. Wow. We can find peace in the fact that God knows the depths of our hearts, the things that maybe even we hide from ourselves, and He loves us anyway. We can find peace in the fact that He sent the Holy Spirit among us for the forgiveness of sins, to sanctify bread and wine, which will happen on this altar in just a few minutes, to call and ordain more young men to preach the gospel, and to place people in our lives like you. Whatever doubt or worry that is not causing peace in our hearts and our lives, let us bring it before the Lord today, who promised that He would always be with us, the advocate. Perhaps it is the uncertainty of what is next, especially for the many who are graduating or ending a chapter in their lives and beginning anew. Perhaps it's a struggle to accept ourselves, a struggle in a relationship at work, at school, or a financial hardship. Perhaps it is a struggle to find peace with the church. Maybe it is that we are struggling with the recent loss of a loved one and our hearts are troubled. I know that I finally feel peace that I have answered God's call. Friends, the reality is that the world around us doesn't offer peace. It was true in the time of Jesus, and it is still true today. We live in a world where you have to do what popular culture tells you, a world that mocks religion, a world that undermines the meaning of the sacraments, especially marriage, a world that doesn't openly encourage young men to answer the call to embrace a celibate life and serve, a world that is divisive. Just look at the Ukraine. The world defines peace as the absence of conflict, but that kind of peace can be destroyed by a single terrorist or a single attack. Just look at last week's horrific shooting in Buffalo. It is impossible to grow past division and distinction without embracing this peace. This peace of Christ begins in our own hearts before it is shared with others and comes only from a relationship with a God of love. Popular culture says that to find peace we must go someplace, buy something, ingest something, or do something. And don't get me wrong, I've turned to these things to find peace too. We all love to go on a nice vacation. But these lead only to temporary distraction from our problems, not to resolution. Jesus' peace is different. It's on the inside. That peace that Christ gives is the tranquility of order within, no matter what is happening on the outside. That is the peace that the world cannot give us. And this is the challenge of discipleship. Friends, often for us, the peace of Christ lives underneath the turmoils and anxieties of our heart. And at times, it doesn't always mean that we feel that inner harmony or emotional tranquility. The peace that God gives us, that He is with us, is often beyond our thoughts and feelings. And we have to really trust that peace is there for us, even in the midst of despair. This is faith. How often do we as people of faith need to hear the message over and over again so that we believe? That's why we come here, to allow the Spirit in, this third gift. Jesus gives the apostles and all of us gathered here today this preview so that they were able to believe when the Spirit came at Pentecost and that we still believe today. Through the Holy Spirit, the Lord continues to be with His church. In fact, through the Spirit, Jesus is even more powerfully present to His followers than He was when He walked with them in the land of Judah. It's that Spirit that Christ bestowed on us on Pentecost and whose gifts we received in baptism and confirmation that help us in the everyday. It is the Spirit who is at work in our lives. And we can feel peace if we let the Spirit take control and guide us. As I look around this church today and see so many people here, my family, members of this beautiful parish family that I have been blessed to have grown up in, friends of our family, friends from high school and college, priests and deacons who have touched my lives deeply, and it was the peace that they found in their vocation that has inspired me. Or a priest who married my parents 30 years ago and now has become my pastor, my role model, and my spiritual father. I know that it was the Spirit who placed you in my life. For some of us, the way we met seemed almost accidental, but it wasn't. God placed you in my life through the working of the Spirit. And I know this because each of you in some way have encouraged me in my vocation, have supported me by your prayers, have loved me unconditionally despite my many weaknesses, and helped me to answer God's call in my life. It is because that I have finally found that vocation, that I finally feel the peace that I have longed for my whole life. Know that I love you in return and pray that each of you find peace as well. And so, my friends, as we gather around this table of the Lord, gathered by Christ, let us be aware of the many gifts that he gives us, but in particular 3: love, peace, and the Spirit. Gifts that are always with us, and gifts that we need not neglect. It's only through obedience to God's love, which leads to peace, and guided by the Holy Spirit, that we can reach our series finale, where the series will never really end, the new and heavenly Jerusalem.